Have you ever wandered through the halls of your own life and felt like there was a secret world just beyond your sight, a hidden layer of magic waiting to be discovered? Tonight, we invite you to step into that world, into a story of courage, curiosity, and one of the most extraordinary enchanted items ever created in the wizarding world, the Marauders map. Picture this: a young wizard named Leo, heart pounding, slipping into the restricted section of the Hogwarts library long after the last candle has been extinguished. He isn't there for mischief alone, no, he's driven by something deeper. Whispers of a legendary artifact have called to him, a map said to reveal every hidden passage, every moving soul, every secret the ancient castle holds. For Leo, this isn't just about breaking rules. It's about proving he belongs to a legacy greater than himself, one woven with enchantment, bravery, and a touch of rebellion. And as we settle into this journey together, we'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? What time is it where you are? And when does your own journey into rest and wonder begin? Let us know in the comments below. Your presence here is part of the magic. The air in the restricted section hums with ancient power, every bookshelf and scroll seeming to watch Leo's every move. Shadows stretch and shift like living things, and the very silence feels charged with possibility. He knows the stakes. Discovery means expulsion, the end of his dreams at Hogwarts. But success could unlock a kind of magic he has only ever imagined. A tool that doesn't just show him where he is, but who he could become. His fingers tremble as they brush against a hidden compartment, tucked away behind a dusty volume of forgotten spells. In that moment, something shifts. The world holds its breath. He isn't just a student breaking curfew. He's stepping into a story much larger than himself, one that began long before he was born, crafted by brilliant and mischievous minds who left their mark on magic itself. This is where our journey begins, not just Leo's, but ours. Together, we'll explore the secrets and magic behind the Marauders map, an object that represents so much more than parchment and ink. It's a testament to friendship, to ingenuity, and to the timeless human desire to see what lies just beyond the visible. Over the next while, we'll uncover how this marvel was made, the enchantments that power it, and the legacy it left behind. So find a comfortable place, close your eyes if you'd like, and let your imagination wander through hidden corridors and moonlit halls. There are wonders waiting just beneath the surface, and you're about to discover them all. Leo's breath catches in his throat as his fingers close around the edges of the parchment. It feels unnaturally smooth, almost alive, and as he unrolls it, he finds the page completely blank. A flicker of doubt crosses his mind. Could this just be an old, discarded scrap? But something in the air tells him otherwise. Following a hunch buried deep in the stories he's heard, he raises his wand. The words feel both daring and sacred as he whispers into the silence. I solemnly swear I am up to no good. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then, a single dot of ink appears in the center of the page, bursting outward in intricate, swirling lines that race toward the edges like liquid lightning. Corridors, classrooms, and secret chambers materialize in stunning detail, and tiny labeled dots begin to move, each representing a person somewhere in the vast castle. It's more magnificent than he ever dreamed. A soft, golden glow emanates from the map, illuminating his face and the dusty shelves around him. It's beautiful, but it's also a beacon. Across the hall, he hears a distinct meow, Mrs. Norris, and his blood runs cold. The exhilaration he felt a moment ago is instantly replaced by sheer panic. He frantically rolls the parchment, muffling its light against his chest, and ducks behind a large statue of a one-eyed witch, his heart hammering against his ribs. He stays perfectly still, listening to the sound of Argus Filch, his shuffling steps and muttered complaints as they pass by, far too close for comfort. The danger is real and immediate. This magic, as incredible as it is, comes with a price. One misstep, one moment of carelessness, and everything could be lost. Huddled in the dark, Leo makes a promise to himself. He will not be reckless with this power. The map is not a toy, it is a key. He decides that his study of it will be methodical and cautious, confined to short, stolen moments when the risk of discovery is lowest. He unrolls it again, just enough to see, and watches in awe as the ink seems to respond to his curiosity. As he focuses on a particular corridor, the lines subtly shift, highlighting a hidden passage, where he never knew existed, one that leads, according to the elegant script, to the room of requirement. It feels less like he is reading a static document, and more like he is conversing with a clever, sentient guide. The map is testing him, offering secrets only if he proves he can handle them wisely. This is not just about finding shortcuts, it is about earning trust. Back in the safety of his four-poster bed, the heavy curtains drawn tight around him, Leo unrolls the map once more. The golden glow is softer now, intimate, illuminating the anxious excitement on his face. His eyes are immediately drawn not to the moving staircases or the secret tunnels, but to the four names etched in a fine, playful script at the top corner: Messrs. Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. They are more than just labels. They feel like a signature, a proud declaration of ownership from a bygone era. As his finger gently traces the elegant letters, the parchment grows warm beneath his touch. A sound flickers at the edge of his hearing, a faint, distant echo of laughter, young and full of life, as if carried on a breeze from decades past. It's the ghost of a moment, a memory woven directly into the enchantment. The map seems to sense his deep fascination. The ink on the parchment begins to swirl, and for a breathtaking second, four faint, shadowy figures materialize just above the woolen blanket. They are translucent and shimmering, like heat haze on a summer day, but their postures are clear. One stands tall and confident, another seems wiry and restless, a third has an air of playful mischief, and the last appears loyal and steady. They don't speak, but their camaraderie is palpable, a silent testament to an unbreakable bond. Then, as quickly as they appeared, the figures dissolve back into the map, leaving behind only the lingering feeling of their friendship. Leo is left with a profound sense of connection, a pull toward these brilliant, anonymous wizards. He isn't just holding a magical tool, he's holding a piece of their history, a story begging to be told. But alongside that wonder comes a sharp, cold prickle of anxiety. The magic he just witnessed didn't feel like a simple, automated charm. It felt aware, almost sentient. It felt like the map itself was studying him, judging his worthiness to wield its secrets. A daunting thought crashes over him. What if he isn't clever enough? What if his own magical abilities are too ordinary to understand, let alone honor the legacy of the Marauders? The weight of their genius feels immense. He isn't just afraid of getting caught by a professor. He's afraid of disappointing these four shadows, of proving himself unworthy of the trust their creation seems to offer. This fear, however, quickly hardens into a fierce resolve. He carefully rolls the map, his movements now filled with a new sense of purpose. He makes a silent vow, not just to himself, but to the echoes of Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. He will uncover their story. He will learn who they were, how they achieved this impossible feat of magic, and what their bond truly meant. His journey is no longer just about using the map. It's about understanding the hearts and minds that crafted it. The potential reward is incredible: a private tutor in advanced magic, hidden in plain sight on a piece of parchment. But the risk has also magnified. If a magical object this powerful can sense his intentions, what else might be drawn to its unique signature? There are darker forces in the world that would covet such a weapon, and his curiosity could inadvertently become a beacon for them. With this new mission clear in his mind, Leo quietly slips out of bed. The first faint hints of dawn are just beginning to color the sky outside the tower window, casting the common room in shades of deep blue and gray. He doesn't wait for the sun. He pulls his robe tightly around himself and moves toward the door, his destination fixed: the library's historical archives. Somewhere in those dusty records and old-school newspapers lies the truth about four extraordinary students, and he is determined to find it. The map rests in his pocket, not just as a guide to hidden places, but as a key to unlocking a hidden past. The pre-dawn silence of the Hogwarts library was a different kind of quiet, thick with the scent of old paper and sleeping magic. Leo moved with a purpose now, his earlier fear replaced by a focused determination. He bypassed the familiar sections on defensive spells and potion making, his steps leading him deeper into the archives, to a forgotten corner where the yearbooks were kept. The volumes here were heavy, their leather covers faded and gilt lettering worn soft with time. His heart beat a steady rhythm of anticipation as he pulled a book from the shelf, its spine cracking softly in protest. The date stamped on the cover was from the 1970s. He sat on the cold stone floor, the book open across his lap, and began to turn the pages. Faces from another era smiled up at him, frozen in moments of laughter and camaraderie. He scanned the club photos, the Quidditch team rosters, the lists of prefects, searching for any hint of the names that had become a mantra in his mind. And then he found them. It was a small, candid photo tucked near the back of the book, showing four boys lounging on the grass by the Black Lake. Their arms were slung around each other's shoulders, and they were laughing, completely unaware of the camera. The caption beneath it was simple: "The Marauders strike again." And there, listed in the accompanying text, were their real names. Moony was Remus Lupin, a boy with a kind, tired face. Wormtail was Peter Pettigrew, who looked cheerful and slight. Padfoot was Sirius Black, his expression already hinting at a rebellious arrogance. And Prongs was James Potter, his hair perpetually messy, his glasses slightly askew, looking every bit the leader. A shiver ran down Leo's spine. These weren't just legendary figures anymore, they were real people. He leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper in the vast silence of the library. Remus Lupin, he murmured. Peter Pettigrew, Sirius Black, James Potter. As the last name left his lips, a soft, warm hum emanated from his bag where the map was carefully stored. It was a gentle, vibrating pulse that felt less like a sound and more like a feeling, a sensation of deep, resonant approval. The map had heard him. It had recognized the names of its creators and was acknowledging his discovery. With trembling hands, he pulled the map from his bag and unrolled it. The familiar lines of the castle glowed softly, but something was different. In a previously blank area, near the edge of the grounds, a new, intricate path had shimmered into view. It snaked away from the castle walls, leading directly into the depths of the forbidden forest. The path was marked not with words, but with a single, elegant symbol, a paw print. A thrill of pure exhilaration shot through him, followed immediately by a cold wave of trepidation. The map was not just a static guide, it was interactive, responsive. It was rewarding his curiosity, but it was also presenting him with a choice, a test. It was as if the map itself was asking a question. How far are you willing to go for this knowledge? The Forbidden Forest was off limits for a reason. It was a place of ancient, untamed magic, home to creatures both magnificent and deadly. To go in alone, with only a piece of enchanted parchment for guidance, was the definition of recklessness. Yet, the pull was irresistible. This wasn't a random path. It was a clue left specifically by the Marauders, a secret within a secret. What might he find at the end of it? A hidden workshop, a cache of their notes, a deeper understanding of the magic that bound their friendship into this incredible object. The potential reward felt worth the immense risk. This was his chance to move beyond theory and truly walk in their footsteps. Making his decision, Leo carefully rolled up the map, its warmth still humming against his palm. He stood up, returned the yearbook to its shelf, and walked out of the library with a new resolve. The castle was still asleep, its corridors empty and echoing. He followed the map's directions to a seemingly solid wall, behind a tapestry of a troll wearing ballet slippers. Whispering the password, he watched as a narrow, earthy passageway revealed itself, smelling of damp soil and pine. Taking a deep breath, Leo stepped into the darkness, letting the map light his way forward, completely unaware of what ancient magic or hidden dangers awaited him in the shadows of the trees. The earthy passage twisted and turned, its walls pressing close around Leo as he ventured deeper beneath the castle. The air grew cool and damp, filled with the scent of wet stone and rich soil, and the only light came from the soft golden glow of the Marauder's map, held tightly in his hand. It pulsed gently, a steady heartbeat guiding him forward. Emerging from the tunnel, he found himself at the very edge of the forbidden forest, the towering trees forming a dark, imposing wall against the pre-dawn sky. The map in his hands felt suddenly heavier, more alert. As he took a tentative step onto the leaf-strewn path, the ink on the parchment shifted, and a small, pulsing dot of bright red appeared just ahead, accompanied by the label Acromantula Nest. A cold jolt of fear shot through him, and he instantly froze, pressing himself against the rough bark of a nearby oak. He watched, heart hammering, as the red dot moved slowly away, deeper into the shadows. The map wasn't just a guide, it was a guardian, actively protecting him from the forest's inherent dangers. He moved with painstaking slowness after that, his eyes constantly darting between the shadowy path ahead and the living document in his hands. The map responded to his every hesitation, its lines redrawing themselves in real time to highlight safe routes and warn of hidden pitfalls. A patch of cursed quicks, and here, a grove of venomous tentacula there. It felt less like following instructions, and more like a silent, coordinated dance between him and the magic woven into the parchment. After what felt like an eternity of careful navigation, the trees abruptly gave way to a small, moonlit clearing. In the center stood an ancient, gnarled oak, its trunk split wide open by age. The map grew warm, almost hot, in Leo's grasp, and its glow intensified, casting long, dancing shadows across the mossy ground. Then, the light seemed to pull away from the parchment entirely, coalescing into a shimmering, translucent figure in the middle of the clearing. The illusion was of a boy about his own age, with perpetually messy hair and round glasses perched on his nose. He wore a Hogwarts uniform from another decade, and a confident, mischievous smile played on his lips. It was James Potter. The spectral figure didn't speak, but he met Leo's gaze with an unnerving intensity, as if seeing right through the decades that separated them. He nodded once, a gesture of recognition, then pointed deliberately toward the hollow within the old oak tree. As quickly as he had appeared, the image of the young marauder dissolved back into motes of light that were sucked back into the map, leaving Leo standing alone, breathless and awestruck. He had not just found a clue, he had been personally shown one by a legend. His hands trembled as he reached into the dark hollow. The wood was soft and crumbling, but his fingers brushed against something smooth and solid tucked deep within. He pulled out a small, oblong box made of a dark, polished wood that seemed to drink in the moonlight. There were no visible locks or hinges, but as he held it, the top simply slid open with a soft sigh, as if it had been waiting for him. Inside, resting on a bed of faded velvet, were two items. The first was a stack of notes, filled with a chaotic, messy handwriting that leaped across the page, dotted with sketches of spell diagrams, corrections, and excited exclamations. The second was a beautiful silver quill, its feather a shimmering iridescent black, and its tip glowed with a soft, steady white light that felt inherently protective. Sitting on the cold ground, Leo carefully unfolded the first few pages. The notes were a chaotic masterpiece of magical theory, detailing the foundational enchantments behind the map. He read about the homunculus charm, used to track every individual within the castle's boundaries, and complex adaptations of the revealing charm that could bypass even the strongest concealment magic. Scribbled in the margins were personal notes, frustrated comments about near failures, triumphant celebrations of small successes, and inside jokes exchanged between the four friends. This wasn't a formal textbook. It was a diary of genius, a raw and intimate look into the minds that had achieved the impossible. The silver quill, he realized after a moment, was no mere writing instrument. As he held it, a sense of calm and clarity washed over him. It was enchanted not with ink, but with a powerful protective magic designed to shield the user and their secrets, a tool for safeguarding the very knowledge he now held. A powerful surge of pride and connection warmed him from within. He, Leo, had been deemed worthy enough to find this. The map had chosen him, but that warmth was quickly chased by a chilling wave of vulnerability. The forest around him felt suddenly very large and very watchful. The weight of the notes in his lap felt immense. Who was he, really, to be entrusted with this? He was just a student, clever perhaps, but nowhere near the prodigious talent of the Marauders. What if he failed to understand their work? What if he was careless, and this priceless piece of history fell into the wrong hands? The trust they had placed in him, even posthumously, felt like a tremendous responsibility, and for a terrifying moment, he doubted his own capacity to carry it. Cradling the box close to his chest, Leo made a silent vow, not just to himself, but to the four shadows he now felt watching over him. He would study these notes with the utmost respect and discretion. He would unlock their secrets not for personal gain or trivial mischief, but to truly understand the magic and honor the incredible friendship that had created it. He would use this knowledge responsibly, as they would have wanted. He carefully placed the notes back in the box, slipped the glowing silver quill into his inner robe pocket, where it hummed reassuringly against his heart, and stood up. As he did, the Marauder's map, which had been resting on his knee, rustled softly. When he looked down, he saw that its lines had already rearranged themselves. The path back to the castle was clearly illuminated, but his eyes were drawn to a new, faintly glowing symbol that had appeared near the dungeons. A small, intricately drawn hourglass. The map was pleased with his choice. It had given him a gift, and in return, it was inviting him deeper in, hinting at another layer of secrets waiting to be uncovered, a mystery that pulsed with the promise of even greater wonders hidden within the castle's ancient stones. Standing before a stretch of blank, tapestry-free wall in the quietest part of the 7th floor corridor, Leo felt a thrill of both hope and foolishness. The map, held open in his hands, displayed a new, shimmering instruction. Pace 3 times, focusing solely on your deepest need. Taking a steadying breath, he began to walk, his footsteps echoing softly in the empty hall. With each pass, he poured every ounce of his intention into a single, clear thought. I need a place to practice magic unseen. I need a sanctuary for secrets. On his 3rd turn, a miraculous transformation began. A seamless, impossibly smooth door etched itself into the ancient stone, growing from a simple line into an ornate archway that swung inward without a sound, revealing a space that took his breath away. The room that greeted him was vast, bathed in a warm, golden light that seemed to emanate from the air itself. It was a perfect mirror of his desire. One wall was lined with towering shelves overflowing with spellbooks, their spines stamped with titles he'd only ever seen referenced in advanced theory texts. In the center of the room stood an array of practice dummies, some enchanted to move and defend, others designed to perfectly measure spell impact. Scattered throughout were enchanted objects floating gently in the air, a set of self-correcting golden snitches, a cauldron that stirred itself, and a floating mirror that could show a caster their own magical aura. The air hummed with latent power, a comfortable, welcoming energy that felt both ancient and intensely personal. This was more than a room. It was a partner, an ally that had perfectly materialized his every unspoken wish for a workshop. A profound sense of gratitude washed over him, followed swiftly by a strange, unsettling sensation. The room didn't feel empty or inert. It felt observant. As he took a tentative step inside, the door behind him melted seamlessly back into solid wall, and he had the distinct impression the room was now holding its breath, waiting to see what he would do. The practice dumb seemed to turn their featureless heads slightly in his direction, and the books on the shelves rustled their pages as if in quiet conversation. It was an incredible gift, but it was not a passive one. The room of requirement was not just a space. It was a sentient curator of potential, and he could feel its silent, patient judgment. It had given him these tools, but it was now assessing his worthiness to wield them. The sheer scale of the opportunity was almost paralyzing. Where does one even begin with a library of lost spells and a magical gymnasium? A sharp, cold fear prickled at the edges of his awe. Mastering this kind of power, the very magic that had created the map itself, was a path with no clear end. What would it demand of him? Would the relentless pursuit of such knowledge make him arrogant, isolated, consumed by the very obsession that had driven the Marauders to such greatness? And the room, for all its generosity, was a secret he had to keep absolutely. If anyone, a professor, another ambitious student, or worse, discovered what he had access to, the consequences would be catastrophic. The trust of the Marauders would be broken, and their legacy could be twisted toward dark purposes. His decision, however, was immediate and resolute. He would not squander this. Unrolling the Marauders' map, he laid it carefully on a clear work table that had conveniently appeared. Next to it, he placed the wooden box containing the Marauders' notes and the glowing silver quill. This would be his academy. He devised a strict, disciplined schedule for himself, vowing to use the room only during times he could be truly missed, and always alone. His practice began not with the complex tracking charms he read about in the notes, but with fundamentals. He spent his first session on a simple disillusionment charm, working until he could blend his own hand seamlessly into the stone wall behind it. The room supported his every effort. When he grew frustrated, the light would soften and a comfortable chair would appear. When he succeeded, a small, celebratory chime would echo softly from the ceiling. Day after day, he returned, his skills growing with a speed that both excited and frightened him. He moved from basic charms to more intricate enchantments, practicing the precise wand movements for the very spells that powered the map's awareness. The room adapted with him, providing increasingly complex challenges, moving targets, magical barriers to breach, even illusions designed to test his focus. His dependence on this secret sanctuary became absolute. It was his classroom, his lab, and his refuge. But this reliance bred a new, insidious anxiety. The map and the room were testing him, guiding him along a path designed by 4 brilliant witches. What happened if he reached a test he couldn't pass? What if his own magical core simply wasn't strong enough to meet the standards set by Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs? To fail would be to disappoint not just himself, but the very echoes of magic they had left behind. After one particularly long session, where he successfully managed to enchant a small coin to vibrate softly when he whispered its name, a crude but functioning prototype of the map's tracking magic, he sat back, exhausted but triumphant. As he caught his breath, the Marauders' map, which had been lying dormant on the table, suddenly flared with a soft, insistent light. The lines of the castle redrew themselves, zooming in on a section of the dungeons he rarely visited. A previously unnoticed corridor, faint and shimmering as if drawn with half-invisible ink, now glowed with a steady pulse. At its end was a symbol he hadn't seen before, a single, elegant key. The room had given him the tools to grow stronger, and now the map, pleased with his progress, was offering the next piece of the puzzle. The legacy of the Marauders was not a single secret to be found, but a trail of breadcrumbs leading deeper into the heart of their enchantment, and the next clue was waiting. The abandoned classroom was a museum of forgotten things, filled with the ghosts of lessons no longer taught, and the thick, sweet smell of chalk dust and decay. Leo moved through the aisles of broken desks with a singular purpose, his eyes scanning the clutter until they landed on what he sought. There, on a heavy oak desk, scarred with decades of initials, sat a shallow stone basin, its surface carved with runes so ancient they seemed to swim in the dim light. It was a pensive, abandoned, and thought useless by whoever had left it behind, but Leo knew better. His heart hammered against his ribs as he carefully set the heavy basin down, the contents of the Marauder's notes burning in his mind. One spell, scribbled in the margin of a complex arithmetic equation, claimed to allow a witch or wizard to draw a memory not from a mind, but from an object steeped in powerful magic. He unrolled the Marauder's map beside the basin, its familiar lines a comforting sight. Taking a deep, steadying breath, he pointed his wand at the parchment, his voice barely a whisper in the silent room as he recited the intricate incantation. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a silvery, gossamer thread, cool and light as mist, began to pull from the very center of the map. It coiled and twisted in the air like a living thing, carrying with it the faint, echoing sounds of laughter and the crisp scent of autumn. With a final, gentle push of his will, Leo guided the shimmering strand into the waiting basin. The liquid within the pensive, previously still and dark, erupted into a swirling, silvery vortex. Without a second thought, driven by an insatiable need to understand, he leaned forward and plunged his face into the cool, weightless memory. The world dissolved around him, reforming into a sun-drenched common room he didn't recognize. The air was warm and alive with the crackle of a roaring fire, and the easy, comfortable banter of four boys lounging on a worn velvet sofa. There they were, not as distant figures in a yearbook, but vibrant and real. Remus Lupin, looking younger and less burdened, was meticulously sketching a complex runic sequence on a large piece of parchment spread across a low table, his brow furrowed in concentration. Sirius Black was leaning over his shoulder, making a teasing comment that caused James Potter to bark with laughter, his glasses slipping down his nose as he nudged Peter Pettigrew, who was trying to balance a wand on his finger. Their friendship was a tangible force in the room, a web of shared jokes, finished sentences, and unshakable trust. Leo watched, utterly captivated, as James pointed to a section of the parchment. It has to be more than just a layout, Moony. A castle is just stone and wood. This needs to feel alive. Sirius grinned, a flash of brilliant rebellion in his eyes. It needs a personality, Prongs. It should only reveal itself to those with the right intentions. It was Remus, the quiet scholar, who provided the key. We could weave a loyalty test into the very parchment, he suggested, his voice calm and sure. A vow, not just words, but a promise, a declaration that the user is part of something, that they understand the responsibility of seeing what others cannot. Peter, ever the enthusiastic supporter, chimed in, and it has to help, not just us, but anyone who's ever felt lost in this giant place. A secret keeper for the secret keepers. In that moment, Leo understood. This wasn't a project born solely from a desire for mischief. It was an act of profound creation, a magical sanctuary built from the bonds of brotherhood. The map was their legacy, a gift left behind for future generations who might need a guide, a protector, a friend hidden in a piece of parchment. The memory began to fade, the laughter growing distant, the figures turning translucent. Leo felt himself pulled back, landing with a soft, physical jolt in the dusty classroom, his cheeks wet with tears he hadn't realized he'd shed. The inspiration that flooded him was so potent, it was almost painful. He had witnessed pure, uncut genius fueled by love and loyalty. A Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, crashing down with the force of a tidal wave, was a crushing sense of his own inadequacy. Who was he to be the inheritor of this? He was clever, yes, but he was no marauder. He had no legendary friends by his side, no grand mischievous schemes. He was just one boy, alone in a dusty room, holding a power he feared he would never be worthy enough to wield properly. The temptation to use the map for trivial advantage, to sneak into the kitchens, to avoid a boring lesson, now felt like a profound betrayal of the trust he had just witnessed being forged. He stood up, wiping his face, a new resolution hardening within him. He would not dishonor their memory. He rolled up the map with a reverence that bordered on ceremony. From this moment on, he vowed, the map would not be a tool for his own convenience. It would be an instrument for good, just as they had intended. He would use its power to embody their values, the cleverness of Prongs, the loyalty of Padfoot, the kindness of Moony, and the steadfastness of Wormtail. If a first year was lost, he would find them. If a friend needed to avoid a bully, he would chart a safe course. He would become a silent guardian, a hidden helper, a true marauder in spirit. As this promise solidified in his heart, the map in his hands grew warm, then hot, pulsing with a soft, golden light that filled the entire room. It was acknowledging his vow, accepting his purpose. The approval was exhilarating, but it magnified the weight on his shoulders 100-fold. The magic was no longer just a passive guide. It was now an active partner, and it expected him to prove his worth through his actions. Energized by this profound connection, and burning with a need to act, Leo knew he had to test this new resolve immediately. He had to use the map for its true purpose, to help someone. Unrolling it again, he focused his will, pouring his intention into the parchment. "Show me someone who needs help," he whispered, his voice firm with conviction. "Show me someone who is lost." The ink swirled violently for a moment before settling, zooming in on the library. There, in a remote corner of the restricted section, was a single labeled dot. It wasn't a student. The name beside it was Irina Pintz, and the dot was motionless, pulsing with a faint, anxious gray hue. Madame Pintz, the strict, unyielding librarian, was lost in her own library. Without a second thought, Leo grabbed his things and sprinted from the room, his mission clear, completely unaware that his deliberate, noble use of the map's power had sent a ripple through its ancient enchantments, a signal of intent that could be felt by others who knew how to listen for such things. The sound of frantic whispering pulled Leo from his studies, his head snapping up from the Marauders' notes. 2 Ravenclaw prefects were huddled by the common room entrance, their faces etched with genuine concern. "Can't find her anywhere," one was saying, his voice tight with worry. Maya said she was just going to the library, but that was hours ago. The staircases have been shifting all evening. She could be stuck anywhere by now. Leo's blood ran cold. Maya was his friend, a kind-hearted Hufflepuff who had a terrible sense of direction, even on a good day. Being trapped between the castle's constantly moving architecture after dark was more than just inconvenient. It was isolating and frightening. Without a second thought, Leo muttered a quick excuse about needing air and ducked into a deserted alcove, the map already in his hands. "I solemnly swear I am up to no good," he breathed, his heart hammering. The parchment bloomed to life, and his eyes scanned the labyrinthine network of stairs and corridors. He found her almost instantly. A single, lonely dot labeled Meyer Abbott was motionless on a narrow landing between the third and fourth floors, a place where two staircases had shifted and left a gap, creating a temporary dead end. A cluster of prefect dots, including the two he just overheard, were several floors below, clearly searching the wrong area. They'd never find her in time. He acted fast, his mind working with a clarity the map's magic had honed. He saw a solution they never could, a tiny, almost invisible passage marked on the map that connected a nearby tapestry of a sleeping dragon directly to that isolated landing. It was a route only someone with his unique guide would know. Darting through the silent halls, he reached the tapestry and slipped behind it, finding the low, dusty entrance exactly where the map promised. "Maya," he called softly into the darkness ahead. A choked sob was his only answer. He found her huddled on the cold stone, her knees drawn to her chest, looking small and terrified. "Leo, how did you even get here? There's a passage. Come on, quickly," he urged, keeping his voice low. He helped her up and guided her back the way he'd come, his eyes constantly flicking to the map in his other hand. Just as they emerged from behind the tapestry, he saw 3 prefect dots rounding the corner ahead. Thinking fast, he pulled Meyer into a shadowy doorway, holding his breath as the students passed, complaining about their fruitless search. They were so close Leo could have reached out and touched one of their robes. The moment they were gone, he guided a trembling Maya back to the well-lit, familiar main corridor on the 2nd floor, the immediate danger gone. Relief washed over her face, followed quickly by a sharp, probing curiosity. "Leo, that was incredible," she said, her voice still shaky, but now filled with wonder. "No one knew where I was. How did you?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unavoidable. He looked at her honest, trusting face and felt a stab of guilt so sharp it was physical. The truth, the map, the room, the Marauders burned on his tongue, but the memory of his vow and the potential danger held him back. I just got lucky," he stammered, the lie tasting like ash. "I remembered that old tapestry from last year's history project about secret passages. Had a hunch, I guess." He saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes. She knew him. He wasn't the lucky hunch type. The guilt was a cold stone in his stomach. He hated lying to her, one of the few people at Hogwarts who had always been genuinely kind to him. But the image of the map falling into the wrong hands, of its magic being corrupted, was a terrifying counterweight. He couldn't burden her with that secret, not fully. It was his to protect. Taking a deep breath, he made a choice. "Maya, listen," he said, his voice dropping to a serious whisper. It's more than a hunch. I can't explain it right now. It's not safe. But I promise you, when I can, I will tell you everything. Just please, trust me, and please, don't mention any of this to anyone. Not the passage, not how I found you. It's really important. He searched her face, hoping she could hear the sincerity beneath the secrecy. Maya studied him for a long moment, her intelligent eyes weighing his words. She saw the earnest worry in his expression, the weight he seemed to carry. Finally, she nodded slowly. Okay, Leo, I trust you. Your secret is safe with me. The relief that flooded him was immense, but it was instantly tempered by a new, more profound anxiety. He had just woven another thread into his web of secrets, and now someone else's safety was indirectly tied to his choices. Their bond was stronger for the shared experience, but the risk had multiplied. If anyone ever questioned Maya, if she ever let a detail slip without thinking, the entire carefully constructed facade could come crashing down. Later that night, back in the safety of his bed, he unrolled the map. It glowed with its usual soft light, but the warmth it emitted felt approving, like a pat on the back. It had helped him do genuine good, to protect a friend, and it acknowledged that, but the feeling of satisfaction was short-lived. As he watched, a new, starkly different symbol flashed briefly on the parchment near the restricted section, a single, stern-looking eye. It appeared for only a second before vanishing, but the message was chillingly clear. His use of the map, his frantic search for Maya, had not gone entirely unnoticed. Someone, a teacher, had detected an unusual pulse of magical activity in that area of the castle. His actions, however noble, had sent a ripple through the castle's magical wards, and now a new, unseen eye was looking in his direction. The very air in the library seemed to change, growing still and heavy with a sharp, probing energy. Leo, who had been carefully studying a complex spell diagram from the Marauder's notes, felt the shift instantly. A cold prickle ran down his spine. Before he could even process the feeling, the Marauder's map, resting beside him on the table, reacted. A stark, black symbol of a stern-looking cat's eye materialized on the parchment, pulsing with urgent intensity, right beside the dot labeled Minerva McGonagall, which was moving with swift, purposeful strides directly toward the restricted section. His heart leapt into his throat. She was coming, and she was coming quickly. She had sensed something, the residual magic from his spellcasting, the unique signature of the map itself. He didn't know, but she was moments away from discovering him and everything he possessed. Panic threatened to paralyze him, but the months of disciplined practice in the room of requirement took over. His mind, honed by the Marauder's own lessons, raced through their notes. He remembered a specific charm, one James Potter had playfully dubbed the Marauder's Veil, designed not for invisibility, but for perfect, undetectable concealment within a fixed space. It was incredibly advanced, requiring absolute stillness and focus. There was no time to run. This was his only chance. Whipping his wand in the precise, circular motion described in the notes, he whispered the incantation, pouring every ounce of his will into the spell, just as Professor McGonagall's sharp footsteps echoed at the entrance to the restricted section. A shimmering heat haze, like dome, enveloped him and the table, bending the light and sound around them. To anyone outside the dome, the space would appear as nothing more than a slightly deeper pool of shadow between two bookshelves, utterly empty and undisturbed. He held his breath, not daring to move a muscle, as Professor McGonagall stepped into the aisle. Her gaze was like a laser, scanning every inch of the area, her expression a mask of stern suspicion. She paused for what felt like an eternity, her eyes passing directly over his hiding place. Leo could feel the powerful, analytical magic radiating from her, a searching probe that swept the room. But the Marauders' enchantment held, their decades-old genius defying the deputy headmistress's scrutiny. With a final, dissatisfied sniff, she turned and left, her footsteps fading away. The moment she was gone, Leo dropped the spell, slumping against the table, his entire body trembling with adrenaline and relief. He had done it. He had actually evaded Professor McGonagall. But his triumph was immediately soured. As he gathered his things with shaking hands, his eye caught a glint of light on a nearby shelf. There, perched innocently beside a volume on advanced transfiguration, was a single, elegant peacock feather quill. It was charmed. He could feel the subtle hum of its magic, a surveillance device left behind to monitor the area. His escape had been a success, but it was a hollow victory. He hadn't been as clever as he thought. He had just been lucky, and his actions had directly resulted in increased security. The map was not a shield against consequences. Walking back to Gryffindor Tower, a profound shift occurred within him. The reckless excitement that had once fueled his adventures was gone, replaced by a cold, sobering understanding of the risks. This wasn't a game. If Professor McGonagall had found him, it wouldn't have just meant detention or losing house points. He would have lost the map, the notes, the quill, everything. He would have betrayed the trust of the Marauders and potentially exposed their secrets to the entire school, or worse, to the Ministry. His confidence was shattered, replaced by a healthy and necessary dose of fear. From that moment on, he made a new, solemn vow. The map would only be used for true emergencies, for helping others in genuine need. His personal curiosity and desire to explore were no longer justification enough for the risk. This new caution redirected all of his energy. His sessions in the Room of Requirement took on a new, more serious tone. He pushed the practice dummies and spellbooks aside. Now, his entire focus was on mastering defensive and protective enchantments. He practiced every shielding charm he could find, from the basic Protego to more complex barrier spells, determined that if he was ever cornered again, he wouldn't have to rely on a single, desperate trick. He needed a whole arsenal of protection. The stakes had escalated from mere expulsion to the protection of a magical legacy, and the weight of that responsibility settled firmly on his shoulders. He understood now that the map's incredible power had to be balanced with an equal measure of wisdom and restraint. Without that balance, his journey would end in catastrophe. It was during one of these intense defensive practice sessions, his muscles aching and his mind fatigued from maintaining a powerful shield for over an hour, that the map decided to intervene. It had been lying quietly on a nearby bench, but now it glowed with a soft, persistent light. When Leo unrolled it, he saw that the familiar layout of the castle had completely vanished. In its place was a beautiful, intricate circular design, divided into 4 distinct quadrants. Each quadrant was adorned with a different emblem: a badger, an eagle, a snake, and a lion, all woven together with ancient runes and arithmetic equations that seemed to shift and dance before his eyes. At the very center of the circle was a single, blank space, waiting. The map was no longer testing his skill with a wand. It was challenging his intellect, his knowledge of Hogwarts itself, and his understanding of the very founders who had built it. The path forward was no longer about hiding, but about solving a much deeper mystery. The riddle shimmered on the parchment, its ink seeming to dance with a life of its own, where loyalty, courage, wisdom, and ambition meet, the deepest magic lies. Leo stared at the words, his mind racing. It was a direct reference to the 4 houses of Hogwarts, to the core values upon which the entire school was built. The map wasn't just asking for a location, it was demanding a pilgrimage. To unlock its next secret, he would need to gather a piece of the very essence of each house, to collect a signature of their ancient, foundational magic from the heart of their common rooms. The audacity of the task took his breath away. He wasn't just being tested on his skill or his cleverness and amour. He was being judged on his understanding of Hogwarts itself. His plan required absolute precision and a level of stealth he had never before attempted. Each common room was a fortress, protected by passwords, riddles, and centuries of enchantments, designed to keep outsiders away. Using the Marauders map, he charted the prefect's patrol routes, identifying the narrow, perfect windows of time when each common room would be at its quietest, typically in the deepest hours of the night, when even the most dedicated students had finally retired. His most vital tool was the disillusionment charm he had practiced for so long in the Room of Requirement. He cast it over himself now, his form shimmering and blending seamlessly into the stone walls and shifting shadows of the corridors. Clutching a small, specially prepared crystal vial for each house, he set out on his mission, a ghost on a sacred quest. The Gryffindor common room was his first stop, the portrait of the fat lady swinging shut behind a yawning 7th year. He slipped inside in that brief moment, his heart pounding a rhythm of both fear and belonging. The room was warm and quiet, embers glowing in the fireplace, the familiar scarlet and gold drapes seeming to hum with a comforting, brave energy. He focused his will, holding the vial aloft, and whispered an incantation from the Marauder's notes, designed to attract and capture ambient magical resonance. A single brilliant spark of crimson and gold light, like a tiny captured firework, zipped from the hearth and sealed itself inside the glass. The vial grew warm in his hand, pulsing with a courageous, determined energy that felt like a rallying cry. Hufflepuff was next, requiring him to tap the correct barrel in the rhythm described on the map. The entrance revealed itself, and he stepped into a space that felt like a warm, sunlit cellar, even in the dead of night. The air smelled of earth and baking bread, and the round, copper-toned room radiated an overwhelming sense of loyalty and comfort. Here, the magical signature he collected was different, a soft, golden, honey-like light that flowed slowly into its vial, carrying with it a feeling of unwavering patience and steadfast friendship. It felt solid and reliable in his grasp, a magic built on enduring foundations rather than fleeting flashes of brilliance. Ravenclaw presented the greatest intellectual challenge. The bronze eagle knocker posed its riddle. I am always hungry, I must always be fed. The finger I touch will soon turn red. What am I? His mind, sharpened by months of studying complex magical theory, supplied the answer almost instantly. Fire, he whispered. The door swung open. The air in the Ravenclaw common room was cool and thin, charged with the quiet intensity of a dozen sleeping minds, still dreaming of inventions and discoveries. The magic here was sharp and crystalline. When he captured it, it looked like a flickering, silver-blue flame that seemed to whisper fragments of forgotten spells and mathematical proofs, a tangible piece of collective wisdom. Slytherin was the final and most dangerous destination. Hidden deep in the dungeons, the entrance was a section of damp stone wall that slid aside at his command. The room was bathed in an eerie green glow from the windows looking into the black lake, the shadows long and deep. The air here was cool and carried a sharp, ambitious tang. The magical signature he collected was a vibrant, emerald green serpentine wisp that coiled aggressively inside its vial, pulsing with a powerful, cunning, and fiercely determined energy. It felt dangerous and potent, a reminder that ambition was a force that could build empires or destroy them. With the fourth vial finally sealed, Leo retreated to an abandoned classroom, his entire body trembling from the sustained focus and adrenaline. He placed the 4 vials on the floor around the Marauders map, which lay open between them. As if drawn by a powerful magnet, the captured lights burst from their containers and swirled together above the parchment in a dazzling vortex of crimson, gold, yellow, blue, and green. The swirling energy then plunged down into the map itself. The parchment glowed with a blinding white light, so bright Leo had to shield his eyes. When the light faded, the map was transformed. The familiar lines of the castle were gone, replaced by a single, glowing path that led down, deep beneath the stone foundations of Hogwarts, terminating at a symbol he had never seen, a single, ancient-looking door. A new message appeared, written in the same elegant script as the original riddle. The Founder's sanctum awaits the worthy. Prove your heart matches your cunning. The path was clear, but the greatest test was yet to come. The hidden door behind the tapestry was not made of wood or iron, but of woven shadow and moonlight, a barrier that dissolved into nothingness as Leo approached, the Marauder's map glowing like a beacon in his hand. He stepped through into a chamber that felt both impossibly ancient and vibrantly alive. The air hummed with a chorus of magical signatures so potent he could almost taste them, like ozone after a storm and the sweet scent of old parchment. The circular walls were not stone, but seemed to be made of solidified history, swirling with currents of gold and silver light. And upon these walls, moving portraits watched him, their eyes filled with a depth of knowledge that spanned centuries. To one side, the 4 founders of Hogwarts stood together, not as stern statues from the Great Hall, but as living, breathing individuals captured in a moment of collaborative vision. Godric Gryffindor's hand rested on the hilt of his sword, his expression one of fierce pride. Helga Hufflepuff held a loaf of bread that steamed gently, her smile warm and inclusive. Rowena Ravenclaw's sharp eyes missed nothing, her fingers tracing a complex rune in the air, while Salazar Slytherin observed it all with a calculating, yet not unkind, curiosity. Opposite them, in a much more casual grouping, were the Marauders. They were exactly as they had been in the pensive memory. James Potter grinning, Sirius Black looking rakishly confident, Remus Lupin offering a small, encouraging smile, and Peter Pettigrew watching with eager anticipation. They were all here, the entire legacy of the castle, waiting for him. In the center of the chamber, under a soft beam of light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere, stood a simple pedestal of white marble. Upon it rested a large leather-bound book, its cover blank and utterly featureless. As Leo drew nearer, the book emitted a soft, inviting pulse of light. He understood instinctively that this was no ordinary journal. It would not respond to ink or quill, but to magical intent, to the truth of one's heart and mind. He placed his hands upon the cool cover, and the moment he did, the chamber fell completely silent. The portraits, which had been shifting and murmuring, now fixed their full attention upon him. It was Godric Griff, Eindor, who spoke first, his voice a low rumble like distant thunder. You have walked paths few have tread, using a key forged in camaraderie and cleverness. But possession is not permission. Tell us, Seeker, what have you learned of the weight you carry? The question hung in the air, heavy and immense. Then Rowaner Ravenclaw's voice, crisp and clear as a struck bell, added, "Define the nature of true courage. Is it the absence of fear, or the mastery of it?" Leo's mouth went dry. This was not a quiz of facts. It was an inquisition of character. He felt their collective gaze, stripping away every layer of pretense, seeing directly into the core of his doubts and insecurities. He began to speak, his voice shaky at first, but growing stronger as he found the thread of his own truth. He spoke of his initial desire for the map, born from a simple wish to belong to something extraordinary, to have a secret all his own. He confessed the thrill of power it gave him, the intoxicating feeling of knowing everyone's movements while remaining unseen himself. But then he spoke of Maya, lost and frightened, and how that thrill had instantly curdled into a cold fear for her safety. He described the profound shift that followed the realization that the map's true magic wasn't in what it could hide, but in what it could reveal, a chance to help, to protect, to be a silent guardian. "The greatest courage I learned," he said, looking directly at the portrait of James Potter, "wasn't in breaking rules, but in choosing which rules to break and why. It was the courage to be responsible for someone else's safety, to tie my own fate to theirs." He turned to the founders, "And loyal, it isn't just about standing by your friends when it's easy. It's about making promises to people you've never even met, to ghosts of the past, and keeping them. It's about protecting a legacy because you understand its value, not because you expect a reward." He spoke of his fear after evading Professor McGonagall, the sobering understanding that his actions had consequences that stretched far beyond himself. He admitted his feelings of inadequacy, the constant worry that he would never be clever or powerful enough to truly honor the gift he'd been given. As he spoke, the magic in the room intensified, pressing in on him from all sides. The air grew thick and heavy, and the light from the blank book beneath his palms grew brighter, warmer, as if drinking in his every word and weighing its sincerity. He felt the immense pressure of their judgment, the terrifying possibility that with one misspoken phrase, one hint of selfishness or pride, the connection would sever. The map in his pocket might dissolve to dust, the door behind him vanish forever, leaving him with nothing but the memory of what he had almost earned. This was the final exam, and the only thing he could offer was the unvarnished truth of his journey. When he finally fell silent, his confession complete, the chamber held its breath for one long, agonizing moment. Then the blank book erupted into a brilliant, blinding white light that shot upward in a column, hitting the domed ceiling and cascading down in a shower of shimmering sparks. The light was not harsh, but warm and joyful, filling the room with a sense of profound approval, and one by one, the portraits began to smile. Helga Hufflepuff nodded, her expression one of deep satisfaction. Salazar Slytherin offered a slow, deliberate nod of respect. The Marauders were beaming, their faces alight with the pride of mentors, seeing their pupil finally understand the lesson. The light from the book receded, coalescing back into its pages, which were now filled with elegant, flowing script that hadn't been there before. But before Leo could read a single word, the portrait of Remus Lupin leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. You have proven your heart is true, and that you understand the responsibility of this magic. But the journey does not end with understanding. It begins with it. As he spoke, the script on the book's pages lifted from the paper, swirling into the air to form a new, shimmering image above the pedestal. A perfect, three-dimensional schematic of the Marauders map itself, rotating slowly. And within the beautifully drawn lines of Hogwarts, a single, pulsing point of amber light began to trace a slow, deliberate path from the Gryffindor common room, moving through the corridors with purpose. It was tracking someone, and etched beside the moving dot was a name that made Leo's blood run cold. The final secret was not a place or a spell, it was a person, and they were in grave danger. The brilliant light from the book slowly receded, and the spectral images of the Founders and the Marauders faded, leaving Leo alone in the silent, ancient chamber. On the pedestal, where the blank book had been, now lay a new volume. Its cover was of worn, brown leather, and embossed in silver were the words Guardian of the Map. With trembling hands, Leo opened it. The pages were filled with the same familiar, chaotic handwriting from the notes he'd found in the forest. But this was no simple journal of spells. It was a testament, a guide, and a solemn charge. The first page laid out the truth he had only begun to guess. The Marauder's map was never intended solely for mischief. It was, from its very conception, a lure. They had woven its enchantments not just to reveal hidden passages, but to reveal hidden character. The map was designed to seek out those who, like its creators, valued loyalty above rules, protection above power, and friendship above all else. It was a test, and by using it to help Maya, by facing his fears in the library, and by speaking his truth before the Founders, Leo had passed. He was not merely a user of the map. He was now its appointed guardian, the first since the Marauders themselves. His duty was to continue their true work, to be a silent watchman within Hogwarts, using the map's power to discreetly aid those in need and protect the castle's secrets from those who would misuse them. As he read these words, the Marauder's map itself, which he still held, grew warm. A soft, golden thread of light emerged from the parchment and gently wrapped itself around his wrist, sinking into his skin with a sensation that was both cool and warm, leaving behind a faint, shimmering tattoo of the map's intricate lines. He felt a new connection snap into place, a profound and permanent bond. The map was now his alone. It would only respond to his touch, his will, and with this bond came a new depth of awareness. When he looked at the map now, he didn't just see moving dots. He could sense the emotional state of the people they represented. A flicker of anxiety here, a pulse of joy there. More importantly, he could feel a faint, icy prickle at the base of his skull. An early warning system, the book described as the ability to sense impending danger within the castle's wards. The honor of it was immense, a wave of validation that washed over him. B-U-T, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, C-A-M-E, a crushing weight of responsibility that stole the air from his lungs. He was just a student. How could he possibly be worthy of this? The expectations of the Marauders' legacy felt like a mountain on his shoulders. He would have to balance his studies, his friendships, and now this immense secret role, all while constantly facing the risk of exposure. One mistake, one moment of misplaced trust, and everything could be lost. The map's magic was now a part of him, and if it were discovered, the consequences would be far worse than expulsion. He stood before the pedestal, the Guardian's book held tightly to his chest. The portraits on the wall, though now still, seemed to watch him, waiting for his answer. He thought of James Potter's confident grin, of Remus Lupin's thoughtful kindness, of the incredible friendship that had built this legacy. He thought of Maya's relieved face in the dark corridor. This wasn't about being the cleverest or the most powerful. It was about having the right heart. Taking a deep, steadying breath, Leo made his decision. He placed his hand upon the book and spoke a vow, not in a whisper, but with clear, firm conviction that echoed softly in the chamber. I accept this guardianship. I will use this map to protect, to help, and to honor your legacy. I will find a worthy successor when the time is right, and I will ensure its magic is never corrupted. The magic in the room sighed, a sound of deep contentment and finality. The bond within him settled, feeling less like a foreign presence and more like a part of his own magical core, a trusted partner and guide. He knew this was only the beginning. The book hinted at darker forces that had always sought such power, and future challenges would test his wisdom, his courage, and his loyalty in ways he couldn't yet imagine. But for now, he felt a renewed and powerful sense of purpose. Carefully placing the Guardian of the Map book into his bag, alongside the original notes, he turned and left the chamber. The door of shadow and moonlight sealed itself shut behind him, leaving no trace. As he walked back through the silent halls of Hogwarts, the map in his pocket felt different. It was no longer a stolen treasure or a fascinating puzzle. It was a part of him, a solemn responsibility, and the key to a destiny he was only just beginning to understand. The weight of the guardianship was a constant, humming presence in the back of Leo's mind, a secret that now felt as much a part of him as his own heartbeat. He carried it through classes and meals, a silent vigil that was both an honor and a profound isolation. The one person he found himself constantly wanting to share it with was Maya. Her quiet, steadfast presence in the days following her rescue was a comfort, but the unspoken truth between them felt like a wall. He saw the unasked questions in her eyes whenever a prefect's patrol was mysteriously avoided, or a lost set of homework was found in an impossibly convenient location. Her trust was a gift he felt he was betraying with every half-truth and evasive answer. Finally, on a quiet afternoon by the Black Lake, the weight became too much to carry alone. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of orange and deep purple, and the grounds were peaceful. He took a deep breath, the cool air sharp in his lungs, and turned to her. Maya, I need to show you something. I need to show you everything. But before I do, you have to understand knowing this will change things. It comes with risks, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. His voice was deadly serious, all traces of their usual easiness gone. He watched her face, searching for any hint of hesitation, but found only a calm, unwavering trust. Leading her to a secluded, hollowed-out spot behind a large willow tree, its weeping branches forming a natural curtain, he pulled the Marauder's map from his robes. The familiar parchment felt different this time, its magic seeming to hold its breath, waiting. "I solemnly swear I am up to no good," he whispered, and the intricate lines of Hogwarts bloomed to life on the page. Maya's gasp was sharp and full of wonder. She watched, utterly mesmerized, as the tiny labeled dots moved through the castle, as secret passages revealed themselves, as the very castle breathed on the parchment. Leo didn't just show her the map, he told her the whole story. The discovery in the forest, the notes, the room of requirement, the confrontation with McGonagall, and finally, the chamber of the founders and his solemn vow. He held nothing back, the words pouring out of him in a relieved torrent. For a long moment, Maya was silent, her eyes wide as she absorbed the magnitude of what he was entrusting to her. Then a slow, understanding smile spread across her face. "So that's how you found me," she said, her voice filled not with accusation, but with awe. "Leo, it's the most incredible thing I've ever seen." She looked from the map to his anxious face, her expression softening. "And you've been carrying this all by yourself." Her immediate reaction wasn't fear or a desire to use the power for herself. It was empathy for the burden he'd been bearing alone. In that moment, any lingering doubt Leo had vanished. She was the right person. Their first test as a team came sooner than expected. Later that evening, as they sat in a quiet corner of the library, the map resting discreetly between them, Leo felt a sudden, cold prickle at the base of his skull. The map's new warning system. He focused on the parchment and saw it. A single, first-year dot labeled Alois Midgen was stationary in a remote corridor on the 5th floor, but it was pulsing with a faint, distressed gray hue. A smaller, unlabeled dot was frantically circling it. "Something's wrong," Leo murmured, pointing it out to Maya. They found Alois curled up on a cold windowsill, tears streaming down her face. Between sobs, she explained that her pet pygmy puff, Arnold, had gotten spooked by a poltergeist and scurried into a vent in the wall that was far too small for any human to follow. She was terrified he was lost forever in the castle's endless network of pipes and passages. Leo and Maya shared a look. This was exactly the kind of problem the map was meant for. While Maya comforted the distraught girl, Leo consulted the living parchment. He traced the vent's path through the walls, his finger following a complex route that went down 2 floors and through a disused laundry chute, before finally terminating in a dusty corner of the Hufflepuff common room. "He's in your common room, Alois," Leo said gently, "probably hiding behind the large plant by the 2nd window. He's just scared." The look of pure, unadulterated relief on the first year's face was more rewarding than any secret discovery Leo had ever made. He and Maya escorted her back to the Hufflepuff barrels, and a moment later, a joyous shriek echoed from the entrance as she was reunited with her fluffy, bewildered pet. As they walked away, Leo felt the map in his pocket grow warm, not with alarm, but with a soft, approving hum. It had sensed their teamwork, their use of its power for a simple, kind act, and it gave its silent blessing. Maya slipped her hand into his and gave it a quick, reassuring squeeze. "We did that," she whispered, her eyes shining. Together. For the first time since becoming guardian, Leo didn't feel the crushing weight of solitude. He felt the sturdy strength of a shared purpose. This successful partnership forged a new dynamic. Leo began, slowly and carefully, to initiate Maya into the guardianship. He didn't just let her look at the map. He started teaching her its language. He showed her how the emotional hues of the dots worked, how to interpret the map's subtle warnings, and the basic principles behind the protective enchantments he'd been practicing. She was a quick and thoughtful student, her natural kindness providing a compassionate perspective he sometimes lacked. Where Leo saw a potential security risk, Maya saw a homesick student who might need a friendly word. Their combined skills made them exponentially more effective guardians. Yet, with this new strength, came a new layer of vulnerability. Every time Maya consulted the map in a public space, however discreetly, Leo's heart would skip a beat. Every shared glance that held a secret meaning was a potential clue for someone watching. The risk of exposure had now doubled. A mistake from either of them wouldn't just affect Leo, it would implicate Maya, and the consequences would be shared. They established strict rules, coded phrases, designated safe zones for map use, and a pact of absolute secrecy. Their friendship was now a conspiracy, beautiful and strong, but built on a foundation that required constant vigilance. One evening, as they successfully used the map to redirect a pair of arguing students away from a corridor that was moments away from being drenched by a malfunctioning rain cloud charm, the map did something new. As the potential crisis was averted, the golden lines on the parchment shimmered, and for a brief second, the image of the castle seemed to split into two identical, overlapping views before settling back to normal. It was a fleeting glitch, but it felt intentional. Later, in the safety of the room of requirement, which had happily expanded to accommodate both of them, Leo opened the Guardian's book. There, on a page he hadn't noticed before, was a new passage. It spoke of the map's magic being designed to be multiplicative, not singular. It suggested that a true network of guardians, a secret society of watchmen working in harmony, was the ultimate fulfillment of the Marauders' original vision. The legacy was never meant to be shouldered by one person alone. It was a call to build something larger, a whispered hint that their duo was just the beginning of a much larger story. The first sign of trouble came during a torrential downpour that had students scrambling for cover between classes. Leo, with a subtle glance at the map tucked in his potions textbook, guided Maya through a series of seemingly forgotten alcoves and a hidden servant stairway, emerging perfectly dry right outside the Transfiguration classroom. He never saw Felix Flint watching from across the crowded hall, a Slytherin prefect known for his sharp mind and sharper ambition, whose eyes narrowed with calculating interest as Leo and Maya appeared from a wall everyone else believed was solid. Felix's investigation was quiet, methodical, and relentless. He began cross-referencing times and places, noting the uncanny frequency with which Leo avoided Filch's patrols or appeared exactly where a lost item had just been found. The confrontation finally happened in a deserted corridor near the owlery, where Felix stepped smoothly from the shadows, blocking Leo's path. "You have an impressive sense of direction, Lupin," Felix said, his voice a low, silky challenge. "Almost as if you have a personal guide to the castle's less advertised features," I'm curious. How does a door come to know about the passage behind the one-eyed witch statue? That's a rather well-kept secret. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs, but the months of guarding his secret had honed his reflexes. He offered a relaxed shrug, a mask of casual indifference. My father was a bit of a history buff. He lied smoothly, layering his story with just enough plausible detail. He obsessed over Hogwarts, a history. Used to tell me all the old stories about secret passages. Guess some of it stuck. He kept his tone light, dismissive, but he saw the flicker of disbelief in Felix's cold eyes. The Slytherin didn't buy it, not entirely. You expect me to believe you've memorized the entire castle layout from bedtime stories. Felix's smile was thin and dangerous. I think it's something more, and I will find out what it is. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. Everyone has a price, Lupin. Or a pressure point. I'll discover yours. The threat hung in the air long after Felix turned and strode away, leaving Leo with a cold knot of dread in his stomach. This was no longer about avoiding teachers. This was a direct assault from a cunning and determined rival. That night, in the secure silence of the room of requirement, Leo and Maya devised their countermove. A direct defense was too risky. It would only confirm the map's existence. Instead, they would attack with misdirection. Using the Marauders' original notes, they identified a series of false passages, tunnels that dead-ended, alcoves that were nothing more than decorative niches, and one particularly convincing corridor that led only to a broom closet famously prone to locking from the outside. Their plan was elegant in its deception. They would let Felix overhear a coded conversation about a secret way to the kitchens, and then, through a series of carefully staged actions, they would appear to use these decoy routes themselves. The execution was a tense ballet of feints and whispers. Maya accidentally dropped a note in the library mentioning the gargoyle shortcut. Leo was then spotted slipping behind a statue of a mournful-looking wizard, which actually concealed nothing more than a dusty recess. Felix took the bait. For days, they watched on the map as his dot fruitlessly explored their fabricated network of secrets, his frustration growing with every dead end and dusty cul-de-sac. They saw him arguing with the locked broom closet door, and a shared, silent laugh passed between them. They had successfully painted him as a fool chasing rumors. The victory, however, was short-lived and sobering. Outsmarting Felix proved that guarding the map was an active, not a passive, duty. It wasn't enough to simply hide the parchment. He had to be smarter, more cunning, and more creative than anyone who sought its power. The guardianship was a game of magical chess, and he had to always be thinking several moves ahead. The playful mischief of the Marauders felt distant now, replaced by the serious, strategic mindset of a protector defending a vital secret. He had won this round, but Felix's suspicion was merely banked, not extinguished, a smoldering ember that could ignite again at any moment. Later, alone in his bed, Leo unrolled the map for a final check of the castle's sleeping rhythms. The familiar lines were a comfort, a testament to his successful defense. But as his eyes scanned the parchment, a new, deeply unsettling detail captured his attention. In the very deepest, oldest part of the dungeons, far below the Slytherin common room, in a section of the castle marked on no official blueprint, the stonework on the map was subtly shifting. The lines representing the walls seemed to pulse with a faint, sickly green light that was entirely new. And there, in the center of this ancient, forgotten chamber, was a single, unlabeled dot. It wasn't moving, it was simply present, and as Leo watched horrified, the dot began to pulse in a slow, rhythmic pattern that felt less like a heartbeat and more like a warning, a deep and ancient magic stirring from a long slumber, its intent completely unknown. The rivalry with Felix was a skirmish. This felt like the beginning of a war. The faint, sickly green pulse on the map was not a glitch, it was a heartbeat. A slow, rhythmic thrum of ancient magic, stirring from a centuries-long slumber deep beneath the Slytherin dungeons. Leo felt it as much as he saw it, a cold, oily sensation that slithered down his spine, a primal warning that raised the hairs on his arms. The map itself seemed agitated in his hands, the parchment warm and trembling slightly, the lines around the pulsing dot writhing like worms. It was no longer just showing him a location, it was screaming a silent alarm. This was a magic the Marauders had never intended to map, a darkness left behind by Salazar Slytherin himself, and it was waking up. He found Maya in the common room, and one look at his ashen face was all she needed. They retreated to their spot behind the willow tree, the map spread between them on the damp grass. "It's in the Chamber of Secrets," Leo whispered, his voice tight. Not the main chamber, but the outer tunnels, the plumbing and foundations around it. The magic is seeping out. The map confirmed his fear, displaying a slow, creeping tendril of that same vile green light, beginning to snake its way through the castle's stone veins, seeking a path upward. The consequences were unthinkable. This wasn't a monster to be fought, it was a contagion. If that dark enchantment reached the main water lines or the common ventilation shafts, it could spread a malaise of fear, aggression, and paranoia throughout the entire student body, turning the castle into a pressure cooker of dark influence. The conflict within Leo was a war. Every instinct told him to run to Professor McGonagall, to Dumbledore, to scream the alarm from the top of the astronomy tower. But the cold, logical part of his mind, the part shaped by his guardianship, held him back. How could he explain his knowledge without revealing the map? How could he describe the precise location and nature of a threat that no teacher could detect, without exposing the very object he was sworn to protect? The map was his responsibility, and that responsibility meant he had to confront this alone. The terror was paralyzing, but beneath it burned a fierce, determined fire. He was the guardian. This was the reason for the title. His decision was made with a chilling clarity. They would not charge in blindly. Using the map's unparalleled awareness, he and Maya began a methodical surveillance of the threat. They tracked the green pulse's rhythm, noting how it intensified and faded, mapping its precise pathways through the castle's ancient bones. The Marauder's notes, once a source of wonder, became a grim instruction manual. Leo pored over the complex protective enchantments, the advanced containment spells that Remus Lupin had so meticulously designed. He wasn't just reading notes, he was receiving direct tutelage from a master of defensive magic, decades after the man's death. He practiced until his wand arm ached, weaving shimmering nets of golden light in the room of requirement, spells designed not to attack, but to isolate, to pacify, to seal. The stakes were no longer about detention or lost secrets. With every hour, the green pulse on the map grew stronger, its tendrils reaching a little farther. Failure wasn't an option. It would mean an outbreak of dark magic that could psychologically scar hundreds of students, shatter the peace of Hogwarts, and inevitably lead to the discovery of the map as the staff scrambled for answers. He was relying on everything he had learned, the cleverness of the Marauders, the protective instincts of a guardian, and the unwavering loyalty of his partner. As the weight of it all threatened to crush him, the map, sensing his resolve beginning to strain under the pressure, did something extraordinary. The image of the creeping green tendrils dissolved, replaced by the same circular, four-quadrant design from before. But now at its center, where the blank space had been, was a simple, elegant instruction. True strength is not one, but four. Unite the Founder's virtues to seal what one alone began. The path forward was not through force, but through unity. The final clue was a call to synthesis, to combine the very essences of the houses he had once collected into a permanent solution. The decision to expand their circle was the most difficult Leo had ever made, a choice that scraped against the very core of his solitary vow. The map's instruction was clear. True strength was found in the unity of the four houses, a synthesis of their foundational virtues. This was a magic too vast for two people to wield alone. With a heavy heart but a resolute spirit, he and Maya began the delicate task of selection. They needed allies whose character was as proven as their magical ability, individuals who valued the safety of Hogwarts above personal glory. Their search led them to two remarkable students, Arthur, a Gryffindor chaser, known less for his bludger dodging and more for his unwavering courage in defending younger students from bullies, and Alara, a Ravenclaw whose name was whispered with reverence in the library, not for memorizing facts, but for her brilliant, intuitive solutions to magical problems that stumped even seventh years. Approaching them was a tense, carefully orchestrated operation. There were no grand reveals of the map, only quiet, serious conversations in secluded corners of the grounds. Leo spoke in veiled terms of a foundational imbalance in the castle's magic, a threat that required a combined effort to contain. He watched their faces closely, looking for any hint of greed or excitement, but found only a sober understanding and a ready willingness to help. "You're asking us to break a lot of rules," Arthur had said, his expression grim, but his eyes alight with the fire of a true protector. "But if the castle is truly in danger, rules are just noise." Alara simply nodded, her mind already whirring through the possibilities. A ritual of four-part harmony based on the Founder's original enchantments. The theoretical framework alone is breathtaking. They agreed without hesitation, their loyalty sworn not to Leo, but to Hogwarts itself. The descent into the Chamber of Legacy that night felt like a procession into the heart of history itself. The air hummed with a potent mixture of anticipation and ancient power. In the center of the chamber, the four of them stood at the points of a massive, glowing rune that had etched itself into the floor, a circle divided into four quadrants, each marked with the emblem of a house. Following the instructions that had appeared in the Guardian's book, they each placed a hand upon the map, which lay open in the center of the design. Leo, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, led the incantation. By courage of Godric, he began, and Arthur's quadrant flared with a brilliant crimson light. By loyalty of Helga, Maya continued, her section glowing with a warm, steady gold. By wisdom of Rowena, Alara recited, her quadrant blazing with a sharp silver blue. And by the ambition of Salazar, directed not for gain, but for preservation, Leo finished the Slytherin section, answering with a vibrant, controlled green. The magic that answered their call was not a gentle flow, but a torrent. It roared up from the ancient stones, a river of raw, elemental power that flowed through the map and into them. Leo could feel it as a physical force, Gryffindor's bravery strengthening his resolve, Hufflepuff's loyalty anchoring his purpose, Ravenclaw's wisdom clarifying the complex spellwork, and Slytherin's ambition fueling his sheer will to succeed. Together, they focused this colossal energy downward, visualizing it not as a weapon, but as a net of pure, solidified intent, weaving it through the stone floors and into the depths below. They could feel it encounter the seeping green tendril of dark magic, not combating it, but enveloping it, pacifying it, reinforcing the ancient walls around it until its malevolent pulse slowed, then stilled, then fell into a deep, dormant silence. The moment the last seal snapped into place, the magical feedback ceased so abruptly that all four of them stumbled, collapsing to their knees, gasping for air. The effort had drained them completely. Every muscle screamed in protest, and their magical cores felt scraped raw and hollow. In the profound silence that followed, broken only by their ragged breathing, the cost of their victory became starkly clear. Leo looked at Arthur and Alara, who were staring at the now dormant map with a mixture of awe and dawning comprehension. The secret was out. They had not only witnessed its power, they had channeled their own magic through it. They understood now that this was no simple enchanted object, but the very heart of the ritual they had just performed. A cold dread washed over Leo, cutting through his fatigue. He had broken his vow of absolute secrecy. The weight of his guardianship felt like it might crush him, but as he met their eyes, he saw no greed, no desire to possess, only a reverent respect for the power they had helped harness, and a deep, shared exhaustion from the burden they had all just shouldered. "What we did tonight," Leo said, his voice hoarse but firm. "What you saw, it can never leave this room. It protects every single person in this castle, and if that trust is broken, the consequences will be unimaginable." He didn't need to threaten or beg. Arthur simply placed a hand over his heart, a gesture as old as the castle itself. "On my honor," he swore. Alara nodded, her expression one of absolute seriousness. Some secrets are too great for one person to bear alone. They are meant to be shared, so they can be protected. You have our silence. As their vows were spoken, the Marauders' map, which had lain inert, began to glow with a soft, warm, golden light. It lifted gently from the floor, and from its surface, 3 delicate threads of light emerged, weaving themselves around the wrists of Maya, Arthur, and Alara, before dissolving into their skin, leaving behind the same faint, shimmering tattoo that Leo bore. It was not the full bond of guardianship, but a mark of trust, a permanent connection to the map's protective purpose. In that moment, Leo understood the Founder's true design. Guardianship was never meant to be a solitary burden. It was a legacy to be shared, a secret society woven into the very fabric of Hogwarts, each member a keeper of the light. The immediate danger had passed, sealed by the unity of the 4 houses, but Leo knew this was not an end. It was a new beginning, and his role as the central guardian would forever be a balance between protecting his secret and knowing when to share its weight for the greater good of the home they all loved. The air in the Chamber of Legacy was still, thick with the weight of centuries and the silent anticipation of the portraits lining the walls. Leo stood before them, the Marauders' map held open in his trembling hands, its familiar lines a testament to the journey that had brought him here. He took a deep breath, the words feeling both too small and too large for all that had happened. He began to speak, his voice a soft but steady murmur in the sacred space. He didn't boast or embellish, he simply reported. He told them of finding Maya lost between the shifting staircases, of the constant gnawing fear of exposure, of the clever misdirection used to confound Felix Flint's suspicions. He confessed his moments of profound doubt, the crushing feeling of inadequacy that had haunted him, and the terrifying responsibility of facing the dark magic seeping from the foundations alone. Then he told them of the solution. He spoke of the difficult but necessary decision to trust others, to bring Maya, Arthur, and Alara into the fold. He described the powerful ritual, the incredible sensation of channeling the combined virtues of the four houses, the courage, loyalty, wisdom, and ambition, through the map itself to reinforce the ancient seals. He laid it all bare, every success and every failure, every moment of weakness and every spark of strength, offering it up to the founders and the Marauders as his final account. When he finished, the silence returned, deeper and more profound than before. He waited for judgment, for criticism on the risks he'd taken, for a lesson on how he could have done better. But it never came. Instead, the portrait of James Potter broke into a wide, brilliant grin, his eyes sparkling with unmistakable pride. "You didn't just use the map, son," he said, his voice echoing with a warmth that filled the chamber. "You understood it." Remus Lupin leaned forward, his expression kind and knowing. "The magic was never in the parchment or the spells," he explained gently. "It was always in the connection. The map was our way of reaching beyond our own time, of finding others who saw Hogwarts not as a castle of rules, but as a home worth protecting with cleverness and heart." Sirius Black gave a sharp, approving nod. "You thought it was a key to hidden passages, but it was really a key to hidden character. It found you because it recognized one of its own. You looked for secrets and found a family." As their words settled over him, Leo felt the immense weight on his shoulders shift and transform. The pressure didn't vanish, but it melted, reshaping itself from a burden of fear into an honor of trust. It was no longer a weight to carry, but a foundation to stand upon. He was not a lone keeper of a dangerous secret. He was the latest link in a long, unbroken chain of guardians who had quietly watched over the castle for generations. In that moment of profound acceptance, the Marauder's map in his hands grew warm, then hot, pulsing with a golden light that was both fierce and gentle. The shimmering tattoo on his wrist glowed in perfect harmony. He felt a final, silent click deep within his magical core, a last barrier dissolving. The map was no longer merely responding to his commands. It was communing with his intent. When he looked down, he saw its surface alive with a new layer of information he hadn't known was missing, not just the emotional states of the students, but the subtle health of the castle's ancient enchantments, the ebb and flow of magical energy through its stones, and a deep, intuitive understanding of its every hidden rhythm. Every secret was now laid bare, not because he had unlocked it, but because the map had chosen to share it with its partner. He had passed every test, not with flawless perfection, but with integrity, courage, and a loyalty that had ultimately expanded to include others. He had proven that the legacy was safe with him, rolling up the map, now a natural extension of his own will. Leo felt a quiet confidence settle in his soul. The journey of proving himself was over. The greater journey of guardianship, of guiding and protecting the magical heart of Hogwarts, alongside his trusted friends, had truly just begun. Leo's final years at Hogwarts unfolded not as a quiet epilogue, but as a deeper, more resonant chapter in his story. The Marauders map remained his constant companion, no longer a source of frantic, wide-eyed discovery, but a trusted instrument, like a well-worn wand that feels like an extension of one's own hand. He used it not for trivial shortcuts or personal gain, but with a quiet, deliberate wisdom. His focus shifted from simply seeing the castle's secrets to truly understanding its rhythms. The best times for first years to practice spells without an audience, the routes prefects took on their rounds, the hidden nooks where a homesick student might seek solace. The map became a tool for nurturing the castle's spirit, not just navigating its stones. This transformation from a curious, rule-bending student into a confident, discreet guardian was marked by a profound shift in his values. The initial thrill of knowing everyone's business had been entirely replaced by the sober satisfaction of ensuring everyone's safety. He valued the trust of his small circle, Maya, Arthur, and Alara, more than any secret passage. Their shared purpose, forged in the Chamber of Legacy, created a bond stronger than any ordinary friendship. They were co-conspirators in protection, a silent sentinel network woven into the castle's daily life. Responsibility, he learned, was not a burden that isolated, but a commitment that connected. Through his actions, the brilliant, mischievous legacy of the Marauders found a new and worthy vessel. Their magic lived on, not through grand acts of rebellion, but through these quiet, daily acts of guardianship. Leo became the living embodiment of their final, most mature intention, to leave behind a gift that empowered others to protect and connect. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that future challenges would inevitably arise. Dark magic might stir again. Curious students like Felix might still go searching, and the castle's ancient wards would always require vigilance. But facing that uncertain future, Leo felt no fear. The echoing corridors no longer felt vast and intimidating. Their whispers were the familiar voices of old friends. The portraits nodded to him with recognition. The staircases seemed to shift just a little more helpfully under his feet, and the very air of Hogwarts hummed with a welcome he had earned. He was not a lone hero shouldering a world of secrets. He was part of Hogwarts itself, and it was part of him. The future, therefore, held not dread, but promise. The promise of new adventures to be faced with friends by his side, always guided by the enduring magic of the map and the unbreakable bonds it had helped him forge.